Everybody, welcome to the Between the Points podcast. We just started chatting. Beau and I started chatting, and Beau's a coach for pros as well as junior development, and this is going to be a great conversation. Just talking about like junior pathway to the pros and what he's experienced through his. He's also played in the futures and played at Nebraska, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Tell me, because I think this is a really interesting topic, right? We see Alcaraz, we see Sinner. That's just two guys. That's just two guys out of so many that trying to make the pro level. And the truth of it and the reality of it is that most juniors and most tennis players are probably not going to become Alcaraz or Sinner.
Yeah.
But yet, I'm wondering what's the benefit of like actually still going for it 100% and just going all in on your dream?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I have a full answer to that. But I mean, I think if you want to do it, I mean, I always talk like it's so important to consider all the variables and the things that can happen, and that's where it's just I think tough with some juniors, all they know, all they see is like, top 100, and then, maybe some other guys, whatever, but like you don't really know what Marcos Giron's career is like. Not many people do. Really, probably only he and his inner circle really know what that path is like. But he's had an amazing career. He's a fantastic player, and he's very rarely on TV. He's never the guy anybody says they want to be, but you get a really fulfilling life if that's what you want to do. But I think it's just like a pretty crazy expectation. But I think it's all across society of like, it's only worth being the starting quarterback for the team that wins the Super Bowl. Nobody wants to play for the worst team in the league, but that guy is an unbelievable player with an amazing journey and career path. So I think it's just like getting straight, what you're really in it for, and understanding that you can be in it, to be a pro player and to play the French Open and to play as a pro, but like there's also guys who get really close and then get injured and then spend 3 years rehabbing and kind of never get back. And then, your shoulder's just not really the same and you don't have that pop anymore. And all of a sudden, that it's over. That is a real reality too. And just one of the options of things that can happen. I think it's just important. Like you at least consider that could happen and you could do everything right and still have it not work out, or you could do everything right and have it work out pretty well. And, you're only good enough to be 170. I mean, 170 is amazing. It's not like that's an easy number to get to, So I think it's just trying to explain to these guys, that's what I try to do with pros and kids is try to get their perspective right so that you're not, comparing yourself to something that like you really don't understand. I think there's a lot of like anxiety there with stuff that just you don't understand the amount of work it's going to take and skill and talent and money and resources. Like it's amazing what the life of a pro really is. And then what, the life of like a local junior in Toledo, Ohio somewhere actually has. It's like pretty different,
Yeah, I totally agree. And kind of to go off of your topic about like what could happen, right? So one thing I always try to talk to my juniors about is that it's okay to have those big dreams and things like that. Just understanding that, the letting the universe or God or whatever you believe in kind of take care of that and just focus on the processes to get you there. And then just allowing whatever happens and realizing that really the point of setting these big goals is because whether you get them or not, it's the person you become along the way. And when you
For sure.
understand, right, when you understand that no matter what happens here, if you get it or not, now you can take whatever skills you learned, right, and you can apply them to different aspects of your life and go all in on maybe something a little bit close to that dream, like becoming a coach or managing a tennis player. But then you're going to keep your discipline, right? Because when you're a pro, when you go for those big dreams, you got to be really disciplined, right? You got to be
Yeah.
able to make sacrifices. You got to be able to like have a positive attitude, and all those skills can apply to different parts of your life.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe you can tell us a little bit and tell the audience a little bit about your story, like playing in college and then going into the futures and how you ended up uh, being a coach.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was my coach. I grew up in Florida. Tennis background, tennis 24/7. He's a coach, and that was great. We had a great time together. Traveling and with my mom and stuff like that. And then I went to the University of North Florida first for my first 2 seasons. Um, and then I wanted to transfer, play at a bigger school, see football and a bigger conference and all that. So I went to the University of Nebraska, and that was great. I mean, met so many good friends and teammates, and got to play Michigan, Ohio State, and those bigger schools. That was kind of what I wanted to do. And pro tennis was always like a dream, but like knowing what I know now, I mean, I really had no idea what was coming. I would always work since like my junior or senior year of high school at country clubs in New York to make money to pay for college, where my tennis scholarship didn't make up for it or whatever. And then I would work and I would play futures with that money. And so you're like, you make like 25 grand and then you go and you try to play futures. And all of a sudden, like flights to Greece are really expensive and Egypt. And all of a sudden, like, you got 6 grand left and it's February and, the work starts again at the country club in April or May. And, it was just like, it was great. Like it was so much fun. It was a lot of stress too. I didn't really understand like, giving yourself a fair shake or like even getting close to like, man, it would have been really nice to have a physio, or like a coach with you or something. Like I wasn't even close to that world. I didn't even know that was an option, but I didn't have any money really. And when you take, 4 months off to coach, it's really difficult. I think it really did help my game though, the coaching, like explaining the basics of tennis over and over and over again, like really helped. And, seeing players freak out and be upset about kind of the wrong things, that helped me a lot. But eventually, I had torn my bicep and I didn't have the tennis playing level anyway. So one of those years that I was coaching, I was, thinking, all right, I'm 6 feet tall with an average serve and a one-handed backhand. Like I need to figure out what's going on here. Otherwise, I'm just gonna, I'm never gonna do anything. And so I started studying the game a lot and watching guys that were kind of a similar build to me that I thought at that time, maybe we have similar skill sets. Can I see what they're doing? And so I'd watch, you know, hours and hours of Challenger TV, and I would track, different things. I wasn't really looking for anything, but I would look at guys who were like, crack through from futures into challengers and then challengers into tour level events and see, what happens when they actually play Dimitrov or when they actually play Ferrer or somebody like that. And so I came up with like kind of this strategy of how to practice and how to play that I thought could work. And I started working on that, and it pretty much changed the way that I practice and the way that I think about tennis. Honestly, from those months of tracking the game, and then eventually I didn't have any money and I didn't have the level, and so I got into coaching and really wanted to be in coaching players. I really thought that my way of looking at the game could work for certain guys, and it was always kind of like, can I get somebody into the top 100? I really wanted to try that. I didn't really know what it was going to be. And honestly, the first job I ever did was with a doubles player who was a friend of mine who played, and he always, we would talk about tennis all the time. And I just started there thinking, all right, this is a pro player. This is what I want to do. And I've really just been doing that for the last 6 or 7 years, I guess. But just trying to help individual players as best I can, and
Mhm.
take what I think about the game and try to put it into guys that are better than me.
Cool. That's awesome. You said something about like you were watching and seeing how what they did from the Challenger Tour would how it would work out against Dimitrov. So
Mm-hmm.
what did you see?
Well, I saw what I think I saw was that you need to practice thinking about, sometimes it's off court. I mean, I think a lot of coaching, adults like I do is off court stuff. But you have to think about, risk taking, and if you have a forehand inside out on the fourth ball of a rally, that's probably needs to get hit, and you can't operate in a world where you're an idiot if you miss it and you're the man if you make it. Like, that ball needs, that's the best shot you're going to have against a better player. And so you got to take it, and you got to be willing to take it, and so thinking about like managing risk and how to play really a strategy, I think, is something that really I felt like a lot of guys weren't doing. I felt like a lot of guys were kind of like, nobody's happy to lose, but sort of playing the same way, whether it was second round of a challenger or first round of a 250 after you qualify, and you kind of like play the same way. And in some senses, the other guy's just better than you. So if you don't take a certain amount of risk, like, you're sort of just hoping for a bad day on his end and maybe a particularly good day on your end. And that doesn't happen that much. So what I really took from it was like, all right, if I ever do get the chance to coach, pro guys who are doing this, or girls, you really got to try to talk to them about the strategy of like, you're trying to win, whether you win 6-6-6 or lose 0-0, like, one is a win, one is a loss, and being a little bit more willing to like work on, and generally, work on second serve return and come in, or serve and volley, or chip and charge, or playing better defense, whatever it might be. But, working on those things in the sense that, hey, this one matchup that you might get after you quali at a 250, you better be comfortable hitting a slice, because you might get Dimitrov and he's knifing everything to you, and you have to know how to generate pace off that and how to create. And if you don't ever practice that, you like hit through the middle, hit forehands cross, chest high balls, then Dimitrov's like a whole different world when you actually do see him, you
Yeah.
know? So like trying to be as strategic as I can with the practices, in the hopes that, even though you're preparing on a random Wednesday practice, 3 months later, you might be in that situation, and at least you've touched on it, rather than kind of not ever touching on all those different ways of playing the game. And, just kind of playing a match, but maybe losing handily. And you're kind of like, oh, that's a different level. I just felt like there was so many practices were the same, especially when I still got around it. Guys at the futures are doing the same practices that guys at challenger levels are doing. Everybody's just better and faster and stronger. So like, you're never going to break through that level if you don't do something different. So that was probably the foundation of like what I started to see was you gotta maximize your court time to be as effective for like winning matches as possible. I mean, that's really an interest to me, is the strategy side of the game. I think you hear about it all the time in the NBA or the NFL. Like, they're running a zone defense and now they're playing man to man. And other sports, they change the strategy based on what players are in the game and what the score is. And in tennis, I feel like sometimes we're not giving the players the freedom to like, dude, take a cut at it. You don't want to be in a rally with David Ferrer. You don't want that. So if you get a ball to hit, you have to hit it. And that's just the strategy for today. Whether it works or not doesn't mean that you're a good player or a bad player. You got to be good enough to take cuts with your backhand and be okay missing. So that's really what I enjoy doing and working on, and trying to help guys see.
Gotcha. Interesting. Um, so as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, okay, walk us through like uh, what you do differently, or like what the strategies for practice based upon what you want to accomplish. Like, is there something how is this different? Like, because you said everybody's kind of doing the same thing. How do you take a player in practice? Because I have a lot of junior players that listen to this, and what would you say, like, how can they get better uh, at practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, one thing that always I try to start with guys on is like working on ball speed. I feel like that's a big factor in terms of like when you're playing at a certain level. So like as you're warming up, you got to get a certain amount of depth against a player who's better than you, right? You got to hit the ball a certain amount of depth, and so you got to be okay missing. And if it's a Tuesday afternoon practice at wherever you're at, whether that ball lands in the baseline by a foot or out of the baseline by a foot, but it's clean and you're balanced and it's a heavy ball. Who cares? I mean, nobody's really good enough to put the ball within a foot of where you really mean to every time, So like letting go of that kind of fear of missing that like failure, I hit the ball out kind of thing. As long as you're doing it, you're thinking, okay, I'm working on my forehand, through the middle or whatever, inside out, and I'm trying to find that depth. What kind of swing do I need to take? What swing path actually works for me? But you got to be okay to, like, if you hit 100 balls, I don't know how many you might miss, but you can't expect to make 98. You know what I mean? So like setting up the expectation of the drill to be a little bit more like a little bit more friendly for learning, I guess, maybe, where there's really no missing if you're trying to do it the right way. Or like if you're hitting through the middle, practice. Sometimes one player might be just absorbing, deep, fast balls, whatever that, which is a huge skill. The other guy's trying to hit the ball nearly as hard as he can. Sometimes you get firepower on you and there's nothing to do. And if you don't practice hitting the ball hard, you're not going to hit it hard, rather than maybe going out and trying to have a 100 ball rally necessarily, which is also a good one, shot tolerance and focus and balance and all those things. But, that's two drills that I do almost daily with guys, is working on the ball speed and the depth. Another thing would be like taking second serve returns early, taking them deep, taking them inside in, taking them inside out. Like all those ways that you start a point, to me, are so much more of a factor in actually winning and losing than whether or not you can definitely like hit the ball without missing. I think most of the guys too that I deal with, I'm not really talking about that much technique, and spacing, which is like with juniors, maybe you need those reps, and you need that time. And so it's a hard balance between building the foundation and then trying to get a little bit more specific. But, so much of these points are decided, and, the first shot, it sets the tone for the whole point a lot of the time. So like really trying to work on that for an hour, that's probably 5 days a week. We're hitting an hour of returns, all different types of ways, because you don't know what kind of serve you're going to get. And I mean, sometimes I'll stand right at the net and try to ace the guy. Like, dude, that's what it's going to be like to play Opelka. And you're going to get him somewhere. I know it sucks. It's an annoying practice, but it's going to be an annoying match too. And at least you've seen it. At least that's an option of guys you're going to get. Mensick is raining balls down on you. That is what it is, actually. It's not like you get to play a baseline point where the first ball goes cross and then you're even.
Is the serve and the return are so essential for just, starting the point and
Yeah.
dictating the point.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
what kind of other drills would you recommend do you do for serving and returning that would be helpful for the juniors?
I mean, sometimes we play games where, like you step up to the line trying to hit an ace and you just serve until you make one. There's no first and second serve, but I think sometimes that mentality of like step up to the line, hit a really big serve and play offense right away, it's different than if you just kind of in the mundane, hey, I'm going to serve out of the basket and like I'll set up a cone, but like doesn't really matter if I hit it or not because the cone's so small anyway, blah, blah, blah. It's easy to kind of go day to day, just kind of like going through the routines of, what is a good practice. It is good, but sometimes I think it's good, like try to hit an ace. That's one way. Another way is like, we play games where, hey, I'm going to go kick backhand. It's a second serve. Where I'm going. I know, and we'll play the point out from there. And that guy gets to probably play offense with his return. Something like that. I think, learning how to like break the sideline with a second serve return is really big, so that, when you're playing, especially like with these juniors that I see, sometimes a kid has like such a slow second serve that it's actually like difficult in its own way. Like you're almost too far back and there's not enough on it. And so you can overhit it, is what I see a lot. But, you can learn to just play off the side of the court. And maybe that's the way to start those points when there's not as much speed on the return anyway. Maybe not, but like, yeah, just different games like that where, at least we're touching on those every week. It's not like we never, serve out of the basket and just get a feel for it. Of course we do. But sometimes I think we can get a little like not creative enough, and sometimes you always serve kick wide to his backhand until it's a lefty. And then that day you have to serve second serves up the tee and you never do it. And like, somehow I feel like we all kind of figure out a way to do it on those days. But
Mm,
wouldn't it be nice if you like, actually spent
mm,
time really doing
mm.
it, you know? I just think about different things like that, that are kind of easy to forget about. It's like so easy to just have a great practice and have a good sweat and work hard, and maybe you leave some of the mental sides just to kind of like catch on it another day, or touch on it before a tournament or whatever it might be, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But
So it sounds like you're thinking a lot about different scenarios that can happen in a match, and you really want to practice those scenarios so that it's not new, so that it's something that they face.
for sure.
Um, Tell us a little bit like who you're working with these days.
I'm coaching a guy named Brandon Holt, an American guy. I've been coaching Brandon for the last 2 years, and
Okay.
it's great. I just work with him. I live in Orlando, so when I'm here, I can help the USTA with whatever they need, and some other juniors in town that I'll work with. But I've been traveling, 30 weeks a year for the last 6 seasons, with different American players, and it's been great. But yeah, just work with Brandon at the moment.
Cool. And how is that like as a coach to, work with one player versus many players and building relationships? And is there anything different that you do?
Yeah, I think it's so different. I mean, it's been fun being Brandon's been injured for a little while, which is a huge bummer, but I've been here
Yeah.
working with groups, of boys, and it's really fun. There's so much energy. You can coach a little bit more broadly, and just kind of giving general advice. Obviously you can help them individually as well, but not as much. Just because you have 8 guys on 2 courts or whatever it is, and there's a lot going on, so it's very different. But it's fun. I really love it. The energy, and especially the younger guys, 16-year-olds. They're so fit and strong and willing, and
Mhm.
can sort of work on anything that any drill you want to come up with. They can do it, and then they also buy in, which is great. So that's been really fun. And then working with an individual player is really different. For me, I think it's really like the relationship that you have with the player is probably the most important thing. Everybody can play. Everybody has what they're good at. If you watch these guys play a match, you can generally, say, oh, he should do more of this, he should do more of that. But what I find is like, these guys have A, they're really smart. B, they're so competitive, so competitive. So like they're trying as hard as they can, and they've heard everything before. It's not like you're going to tell him something he doesn't already know or hasn't heard. So
Mm.
I think it's more, how do you kind of get it into their head, whatever it is that you think they need to hear about their game, or put in their game, or their mentality, or their kind of body language on court, all that stuff. So it's like it's really hard to do that if you don't have a good relationship with the player. And you're also traveling with somebody is a lot. I mean, to spend 30 weeks a year, like I see him more than I see my fiance, and you're in different places and it's really competitive. And like we kind of started the conversation with, like, dude, you lose most every week. You lose, and like that sucks. That day sucks, and you got to book the flights to the next place and regroup and get practice courts sorted at the next place and see what the gym is like, and all that kind of stuff. It's not easy, and I think it's really easy for that to go like uh, unconsidered. It's not like all I ever talk to Brandon about is tennis. That's not it. We have lunch and dinner and breakfast and train rides and flights, and so you really gotta know the guy, and he's got to know you too, and it's got to work. But I think I really enjoy the individual side, and I really enjoy the pro side, because to me it's somebody's like first stream. Like these are not guys that have jobs. These are not guys that have worked, in summers at a country club. Like these are guys that only play tennis. It's their dream. They're doing it. and it's their first thing for the most part. Maybe some guys are like so good they also want to do other things, but they're really at the point of like it's either going to work in these next 6 years or it's not. And I just find that to be really intriguing and intense and fun. Not always easy, for sure, not always easy. But I love that part. It's really they're all in, and
Yeah.
that's hard to find.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's awesome. Um, how do you get your message across to your player? Um, how do you get them to buy into what you're trying to do, accomplish with them?
I don't know. I try so many different ways. I don't know which one ends up working. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have like one way. I think it's depending on the guy's personality and the time of the season. Where you're at. I've tried different ways. I'm really big into film and analysis, and so I really try to back up everything I say about their game with real data. I don't not like it's only data driven, but I watch a lot of film and show them clips and show them things that are maybe consistently happening that we need to work on and talk about and think about. Then I try to be as creative as I can in practice to just get them into a different mindset, a little bit more of like a exploratory athletic mindset, and not being so tennis based. I feel like we can get a little rigid and a little stagnant, especially the amount these guys play. You go to a tournament and very often you hit with another player and you warm up for 20 minutes, you take serves, you play 30 minutes worth of points. You can do that till the cows come home, and weeks can go by where maybe you don't even work on anything necessarily. So I try to avoid some of those things. Um, and I think a lot of it is over lunch and dinner and coffees and stuff like that, where everybody's kind of relaxed and you can really talk. I feel like on the court, I try to keep it as simple as I can, as positive as I can, and as competitive as I can. I mean, for sure, there's no doubt that the competition side is so real, and I think a lot of guys, a lot of kids, they don't understand how real it is out there. You're playing for your life, you're playing for your dream, you're playing for your family, and there's really no time for you know the tension is wrong or whatever like excuse you can get. There's really not much of that out there. I see more of it in the juniors than I do in the pros, and I think it's just maybe a misunderstanding. But yeah, I try to be as creative with it as I can, and I think every individual is different, and that's what I like about coaching individuals. It's just tricky, because what worked with one guy doesn't necessarily work with the next guy, you know. So in some ways, you kind of totally restart and try to get to know a new person and see how they react to stress and pressure and success, and go from there.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody's a little bit different, right? So we
Yeah,
got we got to find that way. Um,
yeah.
so for the junior player that's aspiring to be a professional tennis player, um, what do you think would be something that's not talked about that would be helpful in their dream,
In their dream or in their career?
in their career? Yeah, like if they're
In their
really going to
career.
want to do this, what do they got to do?
Oof, I think what I see the biggest thing is like I would put so much emphasis on athleticism. I think if you're a pretty good junior, you know, your groundies are probably good enough. Your volleys are probably good enough. But the athleticism out there on the tour is just insane. I mean, it is so high. The ability to get in and out of an open stance backhand sliding on hard and then track down a forehand pass, 30 yards away up at the net, slide into that ball and have the control with your hands and your body and your balance to hit that pass or to make the correct read and lob instead of go cross. All those things are like so deep um, in the player, and I think that's like a huge thing that I always thought of like being athletic, like getting in the gym for sure. It's all. I mean, I'm not a fitness coach, so I don't know exactly, but man, I would do as much other training as I could, soccer, basketball, some version of those different games, but buying in and being competitive about it, really doing it, and hope that over time those skills will translate into your tennis. I just it's like such a limiting factor if you can't, if you have an inside out forehand and you hit it inside in, land on your left foot, that foot needs to land and push you forward so that you can get forward enough to have a volley that's chest high instead of a volley that's at your feet. You can't land, fall back, wait and see, and then go, and now you're late. You're going to get passed. You can have a tricky volley, and then he's going to pass you on the next one. And so, like, that amount of balance is way more important necessarily than the forehand. Everybody can hit that forehand inside in, but not everybody can hit it, land, and push forward at the exact same time. And I think that's one thing that like Alcaraz is unreal at. Like his balance is nasty, and if you're not really watching, you just see the power, you see the forehand, you see the drop shots, but how balanced you have to be to hold a forehand, freeze somebody, and then go drop her? That's body control, that's athleticism, that's vision, that's way more than just having the hands to hit a dropper. And I think that's one thing that separates him from so many other guys. Or Tommy Paul. I mean, Tommy Paul is a nasty athlete, like nasty, and that's just stuff that he has trained his whole life. Maybe some's natural. I'd argue most of it is probably trained and disciplined and years on end. But I think the athletic side and then like being creative with your time on court is probably what I would say. Most of these guys, even today, I was at the Future here in Orlando. I don't know. I mean, the balls the balls that these guys are hitting in the warm up, it's very similar to a challenger level ball. There's little differences, but then when the match started, everything changed. And then that level went down more, and everybody's playing a little bit more high percentage, a little bit more margin, and how do you work on that? I think that's something that is kind of where the juice is at for everything, for challenger guys trying to get through, for tour level guys trying to get into the top 20. I think a lot of it is that.
So you hit up on a really interesting touch point because between the points we really focus on the mental side of the game. And I kind of want to just like, why do you think that level is a little bit like you said at practice, that level at futures is just as good as about any level. And then they get out in the match, all of a sudden that level drops a little bit. Why do you think that is? And what could players, junior players to be able to step on in a match and keep that level high, on your
Yeah,
in
I
your
mean,
perspective?
I think that's $1 million question. I mean, I think my real answer to that would be that everybody feels that. I think guys are just, you gain experience as you compete more, and you're better and you're more athletic and you're capable of, playing at a certain level even when you're tight. But I don't know. I mean, I see it with everybody that I've coached. I've seen them way better in practice than they are in matches. So I don't really know if there's a way to like always play the same way. I don't see that in my experience. I think it'd be great, but that's what I think. Probably the athletic side will at least hold you to a higher level if you're tight, if you're nervous, if it's windy, whatever it might be, where you're able to compete at like a really top notch athletic speed and level. That would be where I would start. If I had like a 13 or a 14-year-old kid, I would probably start with the athletic side and leave some of the tennis side out of it, as long as they're doing things right and you know playing with some strategy and all those other things are buttoned up. Then I think the athletic side. But yeah, I mean, I think the mental side of tennis is huge, and um, you know I don't know what percentage of the game it is, but it's at least 50%, if not significantly more. You know, so it's interesting. I don't know. What do you do?
Well, I think it's helpful to I think just getting them to buy in to the process over outcome. and really
For sure.
rewire that brain to that the process is where the juice is, where the improvement is, where the juice is at. And it takes time because, our society and our everything from time we're basically little ones, it's all about the outcome, right?
Hmm.
From
Hmm.
school grades to like number one player, number two player, all that stuff. That trains our brain to be focused on the outcome. When that happens, that's starts to create the tension, the nerves.
Yeah.
So I think that's number one is getting really like really focusing on the process. And when you were talking about like, hey, you just got to get used to being okay with missing that shot, right? So being okay with missing that shot and evaluating yourself, hey, I went for that shot. That's a win.
Hmm. For
And
sure.
and I think that's part of what makes Alcaraz and Sinner and some of the other top players really separates them. If you look at them, they're willing, and Djokovic, they're willing to go for it. Even and Federer and all those guys, they're willing to go for that.
Hmm.
Um, uh, when it's 40-30, when it's match point.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
I mean, there is something. I mean, you have to win. You can't
yeah,
just play well, and you can't just go for your shots. You do have to win.
yeah,
But like something I was just talking about with the boys yesterday before
yeah.
this future, it's big match for them, trying to qualify, whatever it is. And it's like you can hit, especially when you're playing your equal, and it's a tight moment. Like it's gonna be a point. It's gonna be both guys are gonna play it sort of safe. There's gonna be a point. It's such a bummer when you play a great point and you were probably, up in the point 60-40, and then the final shot that you strung together, you were probably up before that shot got hit 90-10, and you miss it. It's the right thing to do, regardless of whether you missed it or not. And so you should actually be, I think, if you could figure out a way to make yourself pumped. I played a good point. I mean, that was a great point. I put it together. I got what I wanted. Okay, I didn't execute. That sucks. Wish I had executed, obviously, but that was a great, like, I'm there, and try to register it more like that rather than, my forehand sucks or whatever it is that you can tell yourself. But I think that's a really big, like, reframing opportunity for young guys to start to learn, because there's plenty of shots that, in my opinion, if you watch, you know, you really can't go on like unforced errors. I'm not like a huge unforced errors guy. Dude, you have to play to win. The whole thing is to win, not to put the option was to put balls in the middle of the court, then sure, don't have any unforced errors. But that's never the option. I mean, you have to learn how to take a backhand early on the rise and hit it line, and it has to be good enough to work in a match. It's not an easy shot at all, but it's also totally required. So like I think sometimes kids are just like they're not taught how to think through the whole situation of what's going on well enough, so they get stuck in this, you know, poor thinking loop where you're operating as if one of the options to win is to just put balls in the middle, and that's never been an option. You know,
Yeah.
so a large part of what I try to do with these kids is like not necessarily help them feel better, but try to help them think through what they're trying to do to be more stable. That's a kind of a word I use a lot is like, can you just be stable for a whole match? Play every point as best you can, kind of the same way mentally. That not getting too high, not getting too low. It's like the oldest thing in the book. Can you kind of stay even? You know, but yeah, I think it's a way that you can think through the
Yeah.
process of what you're going after and what you're doing, and
So
that
yeah,
should help.
yeah, and I agree with you about reframing and like framing the missed shot as an opportunity or it's a gift or framing it as a way as a lesson, right? To learn what I need to do in order to hit that better next shot. And that's something I teach the kids all the time. It's like it's not that like that when you're out on the court, it's and even Djokovic talks about there. It's not that you're not going to have these emotions and you can't have these emotions and these thoughts that are going to like. It's about being able to recognize these thoughts and then process those thoughts
Hmm.
quickly.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
quicker you are able and reframe them into something that's going to keep you loose, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about, oh, I just missed that shot, and I'm like, uh, I'm horrible tennis player. That's a horrible forehand. that's going to create tension in your body, and you don't want that. You want looseness. So you got to be able to recognize that really quickly. Oh, I had that thought. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
have that thought, it's just an emotion speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you reframe it, okay, I had that, you recognize it. And I always tell the kids, recognize with grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just a part of you. Be okay with having that thought, but then step in and say, "Hey,
For sure.
I don't want that thought. I'm going
Yeah.
to think something differently." That forehand miss was because I needed to learn something from that, or because or a great, or one of my kids is actually reframing a question: How can I make it better? Right? So just training that brain to be able to process that really quickly and effectively, and understanding that improvement is the goal. I think that really, really, really helps them and starts getting so getting that into that young mind that like it's
Yeah.
about the
For
improvement,
sure.
it's about the
For sure.
process, it's about going for your shot, being okay with missing. Um,
Yeah.
and the younger we can get that into them, the better they get at it because they're like sponges. Kids are like sponges.
Yeah, for sure. And they just all have so much potential. I mean, they're all so good. And especially, I don't know, it's crazy to even say this, but with everybody's got the arrow and it's all juiced up. I mean, guys are hitting the ball hard. Like it's crazy how good these kids are. It's like, poof, I guess you think this is normal, but like, I'm pretty sure you were way better than kids that were 16 when I was growing up. So the levels only going up, and it's so competitive. And teaching them how to think is massive. A lot of these kids have so much on the line. They're playing international events 20 weeks a year. Like they're little pros. So it's not like they're just playing local tournaments anymore, like I did. You're playing local events with your dad. You're trying as hard as you can, and that's it. Like these guys are all over the place. So I think you do have to really teach them how to think, properly, or as properly as we might think is the way.
Yeah, I agree. And it also with what's going on in the home too.
Yes,
I think
huge.
that's huge because the parents have a huge influence on the kids and being able to educate the parents about like especially for the juniors hey this kind of conversation is actually detrimental to your kids.
Yeah,
This is the way to actually approach it that is going to free them up, and you look at the parents of the players, they were very supportive because
yeah,
parents' job is really to be supportive.
for
Um,
sure.
I kind of want to just kind of I think bring it kind of to a nice circle and just kind of get to know you a little bit better for our audience. And um, what is a memory you have from your experience as a tennis coach or maybe as a tennis player that you just hold on to um, that you love?
Mm, I mean, man, so many. I love the game. I've loved the game since I was a kid. Um, so many good memories of playing in the backyard where I grew up. I think coaching, one of my best memories was I was coaching a Taiwanese guy named Jason Jung, and well, like I said, the first job I ever took was with a doubles guy, and was a friend of mine. And we went, and he was playing futures. He was playing, I think it was 25Ks, which were like big deal at that moment to be coaching at a 25. I was like, damn, I'm making it. And he was playing with this good Belgian kid named Zizou Bergs at the time. He's I don't know. Zizou was like 16 probably, and he was really good, but it was like you don't know any. Lorenzo Musetti was in that draw too. Like there was that draw was actually a stacked week, but like they're young, they don't have they're 1300. You don't really know, but ever since that week, I had sort of followed Zizou because I was like, oh, this kid's gonna be good. Let's see how it goes, and so I always kind of paid attention. And so years later, I'm coaching Jason Jung, and he plays flat on the baseline. He was, a little bit older at that time, and we were really trying to make a push on the clay of like, can you keep learning? Let's get on the clay and really give this a shot here. And we went to the French, and he got Zizou Berg's first round, and ended up beating him. And then he lost the next round, but it was just a really funny moment of like, wow, I've seen Zizou, my first ever week, and now here with Jason in this totally different scenario. Um, he was able to get it done on a slow court and on his least favorite surface, and like that was just a really cool win for many different reasons for me. Um, and to just see like a player like Jason, willing to like really, really get out of his comfort zone and get on the clay and work hard when it could have been really easy to like go somewhere else and play challengers on hard and maybe get more points, whatever it was. But he was willing to do that, and I think that's why he has a great career and great outlook on his game and his career and all those things. So that was a fun moment of my coaching so far. Um, Brandon and I have had some great moments with everybody. Everybody has you have a great journey with everybody. In my playing career, man, I don't know, so many funny ones. Um, so many good ones. Probably the first time I got a point in Tunisia, I had no points, and I went there trying to get into a qualies draw. It wasn't filling up. It was end of November, December, something like that. And I'm trying to practice with somebody different every day. Blah blah blah. You're on your own at an all inclusive resort hotel, way far out for me at that point. I hadn't traveled that much, and I ended up practicing with this guy a few different times who was like just beating the brakes off of me. Like I would get home and send my dad an email and just be like, these guys are so good. Like this is brutal. It was brutal. And anyway, that week I qualify, and of course I play this guy, first round. And I'm like, damn it. Like this is my last week of the season. I'm not going to be able to play a tournament next week. I got to play this guy, and he's killing me. And I think maybe he just got tight. Like he thought, I got to beat this guy. I've been killing this guy. I win the first set 6-0, and I was up a break like 3-1 in the second. And I remember thinking, like, there's no way it's going to be this easy. Like, there's no way. Like, if I have to actually play tennis, it's not going to work. And I get broken back, and then eventually, we just end up in what I thought was like, a really good match from 3-2 in the second set, and I end up winning that set in a breaker and getting my first ATP point, and it was just like it was crazy, like what that felt like in the moment was just like so important. So that's a memory I have. That was really cool and fun. But yeah, I mean, there's so many cool moments in this game and in these relationships with different people that you could tell really fun stories all day.
Awesome. That
Yeah.
sounds like a fun memory, something to really hold on and remember to for sure.
Yeah, it was funny. It was really funny. Yeah.
I could just imagine that guy's walk home
Oh,
or
dude,
walks.
there's no way he couldn't have lost that match. And somehow I remember like he didn't make a ball in the first set. Like it was 17 minutes, and I was like, what's going on? Like, dude, if you just make me play, I can't beat you. I've lost 10 sets to you. So it
Oh,
was
that's
it
so
was funny,
awesome.
and just to be out there and at those types of places, like it's just a level of tennis is that you don't know how many good players are at those places like Sharm el Sheikh or Heraklion, and those futures are filled with really really good players that will get through at some point. Maybe they don't, but like you can't just go in there and win matches very easily. Only the guys that turn out to be superstars really are cruising through futures. So it's funny. I mean, I love every level of our sport, but especially that level always is fun for me to see, and just how much guys are competing, and then you get these younger juniors that are coming through, and it's just such an interesting melting pot of ages and skill levels that makes the matches really fun.
Yeah, that's interesting you say about the younger juniors coming through. And there's been a few Americans that have been doing uh interesting at the like the uh M25s or M15s
Yeah,
or something like that.
yeah,
Like Michael
yeah.
Latonis and I forget the other guy's name that
Andy Johnson's doing
Andy,
well.
yeah, yeah, Andy
Yeah,
Johnson. Actually,
yeah,
I saw those guys last year at the uh Eddie Herr Junior tournament at IMG. They were doubles partners.
yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was really interesting to see those
Yep.
guys just like all of a sudden start to break through a little bit,
Yeah.
which I'm curious to think, what do you think about the American, the future of the US players these days?
I think it's really bright. And I think there's a lot of good players in the pipeline. Nishesh Basavaretti actually plays Andy Johnson tonight, first round in Savannah. That would be a fun match to watch. And Antonius plays Mitchell Kruger first round. I think there's a lot of young boys around. I think there's so many people with talent. So many college guys are so good. I think we're in a great spot. I mean, I don't know, but I think last year at Wimbledon there was like 16 Americans in the top 100 or something like that. Like maybe more. I don't know. I could have the number wrong. And there was also I saw some stat about like 22 guys that have played college tennis in the top 100. Like I think the levels are so close and so deep that it's. I hope we can get a Grand Slam champion here soon. I hope Shelton can do it. He'd be my pick of somebody that could do it. He's just he's nasty and he works
Yeah.
hard and he's so competitive and
Yeah.
so into it. I love watching him play.
I was very surprised that he won on clay like he did.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that. He beat Musetti, right?
I didn't see the whole tournament. He beat Caboli in the final, but he might have beat
Kaboli.
Musetti earlier.
Yeah, I thought he beat who? There was definitely a clay quarter that he played. He was in the semis or in the quarters. I want to say it was Musetti, but I could be wrong. I did not expect that to happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's good for him. He's coming off of that injury. I'm so excited to see him what he keeps doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's so exciting. And I feel like he really excels like in, talking about variables. Like he excels in that competitive you know, frame of mind, which is important to practicing because some days you're going to quality and get Ben Shelton and it's a whole different world, him yelling at you from across the net and raining down those serves on you. I mean, I remember when he didn't he beat Casper in Cincinnati like some years ago when he was just coming out and it was like Casper had never seen anything like that, it's just it's awesome to see and I think I don't know all the American guys. I'm sure there's guys I've never even heard of that are going to be really good too.
Yeah.
But no, I think American tennis is in a great spot.
Cool.
Yeah,
I agree 100%. I think there's a lot of talent, and I do hope we can break through and get that Grand Slam again. And
yeah,
on the men's side, because on the women's side, obviously
yeah. They're
you got
killing. I mean,
yeah,
what
they're
they got
killing
like
it.
4 or 5 girls in the top 10. I mean,
Yeah. You got
amazing.
Coco, you got Pagula.
Yeah, Maddie won Australia.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. She won. So they're
yeah.
they're crushing it. We just need the guys to step up. All right, last few questions, little quick fire questions. All right, what is your go-to meal on the road?
Ooh, go-to meal. I try to find a good coffee. A good coffee is big for me, so I'm gonna go coffee as my go-to meal. I need to find a coffee. Everything else I can kind of. I'll drink protein powder. I'll figure out the food, but the coffee is big. The coffee is really big.
That's hilarious. Also,
Yeah.
have you ever heard of Danger Coffee?
No.
Okay. It's good coffee.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I'll look
yeah,
into it.
yeah, yeah. Uh, favorite movie?
Favorite movie. I think I'll go Gladiator.
Ooh,
Gladiator is a
Gladiator.
good movie.
Yeah, that's pretty inspiring for sure. Who was your favorite tennis player growing up, or favorite tennis players?
Ooh. Always guys with one-handed backhands. I love Tommy Haas. I love James Blake. Simone Bolelli was an unbelievable player. Obviously, Stan, Cole Schreiber, those guys. Cole Schreiber was the man. I used to love him.
Hmm. The
Yeah.
one-hander.
The one guys with the one-e. Yeah.
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 Well, when I was growing up, my hitting partner, his name was Eric. He had a one-handed backhand. It was just so nasty. I hated him.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
would just crush me all the time. I was like, man, I hate you and you're one-hander. I could never. But I think maybe beat him once. That's about it. But
Yeah.
super good guy,
It's a big
Yeah,
win.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you
It
win
was.
once, you still won.
Yeah, one time. Um, cool. And if you had just to kind of just wrap it up, if you had any words of advice for junior players or college players that are aspiring into to get to that next level, what would you like to tell them?
Ooh. I would say make sure that you're hitting return of serve with 20% of your court time and spend 40% of your time doing fitness, doing explosive jumps and single leg bounds and things like that. Change of direction. That's what I would say. I would say leave the forehands cross court for 2% of your time on court. And figure out all the other things that happen early in the point first.
Awesome, Bo. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you. This was super fun
Yeah,
and
thank you.
great to get to know you a little bit better and about your journey and everything like that. Is there anywhere where can people find you? Oh, and book, right? Your book. We got to get
Yeah,
plugged that in too.
yeah. I wrote a book in 2020 that breaks down some of my thoughts on the game. I've actually got a second book coming out. I'm just trying to finish it up right now. But I wrote it in 2020, and it's just kind of a compilation of drills and ideas that I was working on at the time and still use, daily. And it was just kind of actually at that time I was coaching Brandon Nakashima and a couple of other juniors, and I had so little time with these juniors that wanted to play that I gave them this stack of journals that I had. I've always been like a tennis nut. And I was like, you guys just read these. And I should have like taken some pages out probably. But anyway, I gave these kids these journals and like it really helped. I was like, you don't have enough information coming into your world to even understand what, futures is going to be like or scheduling or why do some guys play on hard and other guys play on clay, blah, blah. And I just found that it was really helpful. And so when COVID hit, I had more time and I just condensed all of it into a book. And it's been really fun. And, my only goal with it was just like, it'd be something that would have helped me a lot had I been like a sophomore in high school and read that kind of information. It's nothing really new, but maybe it's said a little differently and just would have given me some ideas, as someone who would, practice with my dad, but, also like I didn't have private lessons with coaches. Like I would set up hits with kids in town and we would, warm up and play 2 sets or whatever it was. So if I had something that would have been a little bit more of like a roadmap kind of, I think it would have really helped me. So I was just kind of like, I think it's good for the game to have some information out there, and if it can help some people, it helps some people. So it's not on the New York Times bestseller, but it's helped some people, and I have all the players that I work with read it. That way we can kind of be on the same page, and if we think similarly about what we're doing with practice and what we're doing with our time, that's really helped me a lot. But yeah, it's on Amazon. You can get it. You can DM me. I can give you one. Whatever you need, I can help.
Cool. Awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
I will make sure to leave a link for it on the show notes and link to
Cool.
your
Thank you.
Instagram and all that stuff. Really appreciate your time. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up today, and we'll see you again on the Between the Points podcast.